And it has been a while since I've been live like this, so you can actually see me. Um, so I'm Shirley, and I'm with the Spirit of Matter episode. And this is a Venus Wisdom on a Venus Day episode, which I haven't done in a while. And this is where I bring stuff related to Venus on Venus Day. And today I choose to talk about Venus and the Moon. And even though they are not creating any aspect with Venus today, and perhaps because of that, um, I'm called to talk about these two planets in relation to each other. And of course, relationships, because Venus, why not? I will try to do also um, finances if I can. Let's see. So, Venus is love language, um, and the moon is our self care language. Venus is what makes us feel loved, the moon is what makes us feel safe. Now, of course, the moon in Scorpio that can alter and vary, um, but that's a general statement that we need to understand when we come to think about how those two planets relate or don't relate in our charts, and how does that affect our relationships, because it seems like what makes you feel loved feel safe, but when the moon and Venus don't interrelate in your chart, um, they don't make a connection, that means that there is no connection between what makes you feel loved and what makes you feel emotionally safe, cared for, nourished. And when you address a relationship that is significant in your life, where you express both your Venus and your Moon, when you expect to feel safe emotionally and to feel loved, and perhaps also desired, although desired can also be Mars. But yes, Venus is also desired, it's that sort of love as well. And then you need to look where your Venus is to understand what, or ask yourself, what makes me feel loved? What is my love language? What are the type of things that I need the other person to be, do, say, feel, or have so that I can feel loved? Okay, very basic. It's just the kind of when people express quality time, touch, kind words. The moon is, where do I feel safe? What is self care for me in general? And that might be radically different. Let's say you have a moon in, um, a moon in Gemini and Venus in Cancer. So what you need, what your self care need, is a good conversation, or well, that actually where they can relate a bit, but um, exchange of ideas, getting sociable, um, doing something with your hands, like handcraft can also be um, some of the stuff you do for self care. And then let's say a Venus in Cancer, you would need to be nourished, or your love language, maybe you like it that your partner prepares a nice meal for you, and they caters to your baby needs, like um, a bit mothering you or something like that. So those two don't not, like, if they don't conjunct, they don't create a connection. You might attract certain people that you feel safe with, but you don't feel like loved and desired with, even though they may love and desire you. or you may attract people that you feel love and desired by, but you don't feel safe with. It's like, oh, I don't know, Venus Cancer. It's like, make these lovely meals for me. They listen to me, which is also Gemini need. But when I try to exchange ideas with them, it's like they listen to me and they care for my experience, but we don't really get to talk. Like they don't tell me what they think something like that, because the let's say the Gemini would need more exchange of ideas, and but the Moon needs exchange of emotions. So one needs gets met while the other doesn't. Um, Ideally, you would have some sort of like a sextile or a trine between Venus and the Moon, which is ideal, so it doesn't happen mostly. And then you would have you would have good chance to meet both these needs at relative ease. Like it would come easy for you to feel both safe and loved in your connections, both safe and desired in your connections. Now, what happens when they don't? Then it doesn't necessarily have to mean something, crazy if they don't make an aspect. Another situation can be that they make a hard aspect, like an opposition, or any of the hard aspect, like the 22.5 degrees from each other, or something like that. That um, there's a manifesting aspect that creates some sort of tension. Then that can mean, in that case, that if you satisfy what makes you feel safe, then you might not feel so loved and desired. But if you satisfy what makes you feel loved and desired, then you don't feel emotionally safe. And that is more difficult to kind of blend into a healthy connection. And that can create a situation where, like you're not dealing with hard aspects of malefics, but you're still dealing with something that could um, create quite a challenge in your love life. How are you going to address this? Well, it really depends on you and also what works for you. Um, and you might need to maybe develop a creative solution to these, or maybe develop a commitment style that supports that or whatnot. If they don't make any connection, then you might get to feel also where y- the place where you leave your moon and the place where you leave your Venus um, don't naturally make a connection. It doesn't mean that you cannot make this connection. It just means that you're just going to have to cognitively work at that. If you think about white tantric or uh, tantric practices where you connect the heart and the womb, or the energetic womb, which is regardless of gender, it's just the sex chakra, the second sex chakra, not the root chakra. Then those are the type of practices that are supposed to bring um, your heart. With your heart always needs to feel safe, and loved and appreciated, and so on and so forth, and our desirous nature together. Then that does not in itself the like that in itself does not address moon that rules also the eyes, but to some extent it also kind of does. So I'm not saying that this practice is going to solve everything, but you kind of need to understand, where is my moon, what makes me feel safe, how do I meet those needs, where is my Venus, how do I meet those needs. So if you have like a checklist of what dear universe, I petition to you to find that significant whatnot, then you list things, and the Venus list things, and bring them together to the same list, if or not the same list, like depending on how do you choose to meet those needs. Um, so this is something that I actually didn't see people talk about because people are like Venus, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, moon, sun. Sometimes in moon, sun, they're like our mother and our father, or our lunar and solar caregiving figures. So yes, of course, they will affect our more significant relationship, or the ones we get closer, not necessarily closely intimated with, but the ones we spend the most time with sometimes, of relationships where our projections from our upbringing are going to come up. So yes, the sun and moon are very important in relationships. Um, and of course Venus and Mars. So people are like Venus and Mars, your Venus side, your Mars side, your kind of aggressive, desirous side, and your more sensual side. And this is important. You also, there's also the Venus Mars, another, like another point of view. If those two don't meet, then yeah, it can be a bit awkward, or your experience of your sensuality can be a bit disconnected, or you have to bring these two together somehow. If these two hardly aspect each other, so they can be facets to your desirous nature that are at odds with your sensual nature, or like you want to feel, let's say your love language is hugs, and your desirous nature is, I don't know, tying somebody up and role playing like with sadistic and masochistic stuff, and it's like totally contradicting your, like, what makes you feel loved. And that can, bring up, it brings bringing up many conflicts in our more intricate, intimate nature. But I haven't seen people talking about Venus Moon, because we expect this, like, we are supposed to be safe in our relationships generally, like, you know safe. We're supposed to be a place where we are cared for, and cared for is moon and sun. It's different types of caring. But usually we're supposed to be in relationships where we care about each other and feel cared for and are cared for, in a way that is beneficial, in a way that is, beautiful. This is where our upbringing comes up. Um, but also we're supposed to enjoy feeling loved and desired, um, and appreciated in other ways. There is care and there is love. We can care for our spouse, for our sisters, for our pets. We usually desire those we actually, you know, the type, let's say, at least of the type of desires that is ethical to pursue. It's usually, um, we want that to be a person that we care for. We want that to be a person that is not, our sibling or father or pet. But that's just common and simple to explain that. It's like we want to be friends with our partner, and we also want to enjoy, you know, feeling desired or feeling romantically loved. I'm using the word desired and romantically loved because it's not all like there are people who are asexual, and I'm trying to accommodate for that in my, in my reading. And of course, there are people whose commitment style is different and so on. And that can actually be one of the cases where different commitment styles, or alternative sexuality can come into play. We have, well, I care for certain people, and then I like to sleep with certain other people, and I never found someone that I both care for and like to sleep with. And so this is me, and this is how I meet my needs. Those are things we see a lot also in alternative sexuality, and like alternative commitment styles, and all those things that we need to accommodate for when we think about connections, and we need to accommodate for in our worldview, because You could be like the most, I don't know, vanilla cisgender monogamous being, and if you don't know about these things, you can get really hurt. Because for you, it's like, well, of course, I'm seeking someone who loves and desires me and cares for me. Well, duh. But this well, duh is not, it's not true to all people, and it's not possible to all people at the same time. Or alternatively, you could be the type of person for whom you're trying to go, maybe even for astrology or for readings or for relationship coaching or whatnot, and they keep having this very, binary oriented form of offerings, and it's not because they don't want to, like they can try and say, well, if your gender is not, cisgender, then, think maybe you're more feminine, you're more masculine. It's like they still try to find the way of the ancients to explain that, which is, by the way, not that far-fetched, because you think about cultures where people like are twin spirit, two spirit, and two spirit basically means that you do the masculine things and the feminine things, and you heal those relationships within you. And it also is, like, it's also a medical thing. Also, in the traditional Chinese medicine, there is yin and there is yang, and yes, they do correlate with feminine and masculine, and you have that for your bodily organs. But also, this shape of the hand is yin, is more round, but this finger is yang. But then if you go about, like, that part of the finger is, I think, is yin, and that part of the finger is yang, because this is like out and this is in. So it's not, it's binary, but it's not close-minded. So I think that's often criticized as well, from a point of view of people who misjudge or misunderstand what, like, what this binary category actually, what those binary categories actually stand for. Um, However, there's also a legitimate criticism that we do need to think differently on things. And when we look at the planets, we could say, what is Venus in you when it comes to relationship? Well, that's what makes me feel loved, what makes me feel to some extent desired. This is, the way I like to be touched, the way I like to be treated in relationships. And when you think moon, so it's like, oh, this is the person, the people, the situations, the things that I feel safe with. This is where I go for self-care. And of course, it's even more intricate because your moon might be aspected greatly, but you're more than likely to have at least one aspect that is kind of off. And that one, you could have a wonderful moon, but it's like out of bounds, or a wonderful moon, but it, suddenly in conjunct Uranus, like I have, or both of them. And then that dramatically affects your experience of being safe in the world. So, there are reasons for that, um, but this is also another thing that is more universal, that you can address and understand uh, from a different point of view. What are those intricacies? Like, instead of saying, "Oh, I don't like to be friend zoned," try saying, maybe I go to people who make me feel cared for and safe, but they don't, like, they make me feel desired. um or alternatively, the other way around, like the friends with benefits or something like that. I think friends with benefits is very, very complicated, like because you have sexual chemistry, and then you have caring for each other, but you because it is supposed to be friendship. So I guess, like, I don't. It's a format that I don't understand. Like, the only thing I understand is, like, maybe it's people who don't agree on how to educate a child or something, and that's why. It's like, what's going on? Like, you like to have sex with each other, and you're good friends. So what's going on? What is that missing part? Like, okay, but of course it exists, and I don't quite know to astrologize this, but those things can be something to be related with Venus not making aspects to Mars, or Venus not making aspects to Moon, or Venus not making aspects to Jupiter, maybe. You know, sometimes it can be to Jupiter. It's like you can have, like, you have it all, but your worldviews do not go together. Your life mission together is not in alignment, and then you would still separate. Um, so that's my Venus, and I do want to give like something to like a point of hope. So my point of hope, and that would be that you can look at the moon and you can look at Venus, and you go to my Moon Across the Zodiac series and you see where your moon is. If your moon is on the signs that I haven't recorded yet, then go to one of my videos, write me in the comments, please do the moon in so and so, and the next time the moon is in your sign, I will attempt to record a video about the moon in your sign. So Venus is now in Capricorn, and funnily enough, I talk about like really practical things to do with relationships, like really practical, direct data. And you go to the moon, you find how to meet your moon needs. Um, if you're into talismanic magic, one of the things that I cannot say like I recommend because I haven't physically worked with that myself, and it's also different for other people, and it's also very, very, very intense. So there is the Sphere and Sundry Moon series that I just like for for energy. I don't know if like in general when it comes to crystals, talismans, anything that you energetically, I always suggest to look at the energy, to expose yourself to the energy, maybe take a screenshot or something like that for personal use, and then slowly begin to see, you know, and you might like if you need to work with that, you will like this will find its way to you, you will find its way to it. But you can work with something like that Moon series, where you have the energy of the moon that and you need to ward yourself, so you would need to know how to work with it. It's like it's not a beginner thingy. Not that, like, well, you know what I like. You need to know how to guard yourself because you do need to know how to vanish and to set your boundaries and so on and so forth. Um, and that can help you introduce the energy of what's going on with your natal moon and how to meet your attachment desires, or how to come to a safe attachment issues up, and you can set the intentions, and that's one way to work with that. And you can look at my Moon series and Moon Across the Zodiac series. It's not Moon, like I don't know the talismans just yet. So and then you can get the clue at what is it for you that would make you feel safe, and what kind of practices for self-care you can try today that can improve upon your accessibility to having a safe attachment with your moon. Okay, just having a safe attachment style with whatever moon you come to the surface, and that's going to look different for different people. And at the same time, look at Venus. Where is Venus in your chart? And with Venus, I think meeting moon desires, moon desires. It's moon is in my fifth house, so it's easy for me to say moon desires. Usually, it's like those words do not intermesh together, like because it's about self-care. Meeting your moon needs and your Venusian desires, um, it's like, you know, self-care versus self-pleasure. So your Venus sign is you more about not just your self-pleasure, because Venus is to do with others and bringing others together, um, but the way to begin that is to give it to yourself, and that can be taking yourself on a date, that can be buying yourself gifts, that can be giving yourself quality time with you, that can be saying kind words to yourself, um, that can be a million things. So doing both the moon work and the Venus work And you can set like an intention that if these two can come together, or you can even cognitively think about what are those practices of self care that I can bring into my self pleasure? And what are those practices of self pleasure that I can bring into my self care and still feel safe? Those, if you think about groups, okay, the subset self care and the subset um, self pleasure, when they have an overlap, okay, when they do try and they have it, you can see the overlap, but when there is a way that you can somehow do something that could overlap or that could, that could be mixing the two, or alternatively giving place for both separately. And sometimes that would be that. It's like, those are the things that make me feel safe. I do them. And then those are the things that make me feel, you know, desired and pleasurable and whatnot. I do them. Just make sure you make place for both of these and you make time for both of these in your life. And different people might meet those different needs in different ways. And the more you like open your mind, the more you're even aware that both options can be. It can both be something that introduces radical acceptance within you, or explain to you why things are so. Why is this your experience, and what can you expect from you, or what could you do about this? You can also set an intention if you want those needs to, um, well, not intertwine, but at least to overlap, or if you want to be able to meet those needs together, or be able to meet those needs with the same person or in the same relationship, then you can set an intention for that. That if it's possible, if it's open for you, if it's really what's in your best interest, in your highest good, then you can ask for that to be not for a specific person. Don't never do specific, never manifest on somebody specific, never. You can pray for the well-being of a person, but manifestation always general, always general. Focus, what do I want, what do I need, what makes me feel loved, what opens my mind to higher realms, what advances my life path, and so on and so forth. Those are the kind of things. Say, oh, if it's possible, if it's in my best interest, I would like to meet that with the same person, or I would like to meet that, and that with with one person, with a significant other, if this is your desire. Um, and also you're being able to open up to the possibility that maybe that's not how it works for you, and now you can get more clarity on the different factors at play within you know the grand picture. um, so I touched on it from the perspective of Venus. And now I'm going to try and do a bit of finances, because Venus is not just relationships and romantic relationships. It's also bringing two sides together to meet. So it's also international relationships for some countries, and it's also diplomacy. Okay, it's ruling both Taurus and Libra, and it's also the type of deals that have the potential to be win-win deals. So it's like business partners, or just closing a deal, or trade. It's also values. Um, so with Venus Moon on the value level, it can mean that what you value and what's nourishing for you are two different things. For example, you might value, maybe you want nice luxury cars, and you really desire them, you really value them, you really want to have them, but what you like to do with them, for example, is take a Lamborghini and ride as fast as you can in Italy, and all those things that your moon sign actually wants safety. Or it could be the other way around. You might want to go for the car, because Venus also rules cars. So you might want to go for the car that's actually a family car, that's a safe car for you, for your future family, for your children. But your moon sign likes to have extreme excitement. Okay, maybe have like a moon Uranus or something like that that likes to go there. And those two can be like, but I value being safe. And the moon is like, but I feel safe where it's dangerous. So, um, and you can understand how that can play out into your finances as well. For example, you can value, okay, a classic like Venus Taurus, things that you can value, things of comfort, that you can keep for long. Or Moon suddenly says, well, I would really feel safe if I dealt with that emotional thing in my upbringing. Let's spend money on therapy. Um, and then you're like, well, I'm going to see my therapist, but I value comfort and I don't have money for to warm myself this winter. So that's kind of odd. Um, Whereas, another Venus, would go and say, oh, well, I actually like this, extreme weather conditions. Maybe I'll do a live, a van life and just maintain my sessions with my therapist from on Zoom or something. Um, I got this idea because I actually have a friend who is working as a therapist on Zoom and traveling the world. Um, so that is another thing that can play into your finances and financial decisions. And you would, if you have the moon and Venus in harmony with each other, then even your financial decisions, the things that make you feel cared for, self-nourished, safe, and the things that you value are in harmony. So let's say, I don't know, you have the moon in Capricorn and Venus in Virgo. And you decide that you're going to invest in a feng shui course to design your home life or your surroundings, designing your surroundings, controlling your surroundings, very much Virgo. Um, and that makes you feel both pleasure to fix things, to clean things, to put things here, to put things there, and it satisfies your moon that feels safe when it's learning something, when it's dedicating when it's committing to the very detail and to a time oriented thing of how you place this, how you place that. And that can be an arrangement. So uh, so that is something, we definitely meet our psychology and what makes us feel safe in our in our in our financial or fiscal decisions. Our emotional needs play a very big role in that. And also there's a lot of money going into advertisement and going into marketing that is addressing those cycles, trying to figure out your moon needs and grab you by the while you value something, you value I just want a phone you can make calls and emails from and receive some WhatsApps. And then, you go to the store and you're being grabbed by your moon. Oh, but look at this. Oh, but look, let's say you have, I don't know, moon in the 10th house. Oh, but look at this. Everybody now, you can have the phones that every CEO in every company uses and only for this price and so on and so forth. And you're like ending up purchasing something that applied to something that's not what you came up with when you thought about, okay, what do I want to spend, what kind of deal do I want to make. um, but you need to also understand that you weren't necessarily being manipulated. Your emotional needs were being addressed, because if you're not happy, if you're not safe, if you're not feeling like you've been cared for, you can end up with a very, good deal on paper that you're unsatisfied with. And businesses know this, that you're going to be unsatisfied, and you're going to call, and you're going to have complaints, and you're going to, and it's not, none of them are going to be rational, because there seems to be everything okay with the product, and everything okay with your, conversation, and everything okay. You were given all the details, the product was great, the service was good, but you would find something to complain about because your emotional needs were not met at the time of the purchase. Business people, marketing people know that, and even the most naive people of them, they understand that they need to address both your moon and your Venus when you come to, and your Mercury, of course, when you come to make a purchase. Venus is also the spouse, is the sister and women in your life, and it's also the spouse, especially for men who have a female spouse. And so that is, when you go into business, if you think about having a business, you close the very big deal. Let's say real estate, you close the very big deal, and the couple have both seen the apartment, but kind of like the man was there more than the woman, and you kind of, if you're on the, if you're the real estate person, then you can get kind of fearful that that woman did not look at that property for that long, and something might not click. And sometimes the business, they play out in such a way that, we've closed the deal with your moon, but there comes your Venus, and she's like, something's off. And a deal can actually fall for that. uh, Probably if you are working as a, trade or seller or marketing person, this is, while it's so very useful for you, you probably don't have the access to your clients' charts and shouldn't have, um, and you're probably not going to give it unless you choose to disclose yours, and you're all astrologers, which is not the current reality. But that can be, the type of deals where everything seems to be okay, but then somebody, like, it just suddenly falls. Like, you thought this couple were about to close a deal, and they're just suddenly ghosting you. Um, that can be the case. And it's like you address the moon deals. You're gonna feel safe. This is a safe neighborhood, or there are extreme activities in this neighborhood, or like you try to see what your customer is about and what is the woman about, but you couldn't really get to know her. And then that could be like, some sort of like a Venus Pluto there, hidden Venus, and then she's like, yeah, like there's no way, like you can't, you don't know why. She just, the boat just ghosts you, and you don't have a chance to explain yourself or learn what was it, the thing that made them drop the deal. It seems so right for them, and you try to find the best deal for them. Um, so the best deal for them is sometimes like the best relationship. And you could have this experience of going back to the Venus wisdom on a Venus day on a relationship. You could have that experience on dating. If you're dating someone and you're like, you feel a connection. A connection is usually Venus, but you feel like something was happening there. Just some emotional. You felt great with each other. That can be also Moon, and but suddenly they ghosted you, or suddenly you ghosted them, or it feels like something's going right, but there's just something weird about, like, just something not happening, or happening in a very like different way. Then of course dating is also is already synastries. Two charts meet each other, and the chart of the transit of when do they meet, and so on and so forth. It's like a lot, but it can be, moon Venus discrepancies can be responsible for those issues where it's going good, they like me, but they, like, something fell for some. And when it's moon that's not satisfied, You could be having like even physical encounters, and then like somebody finds either they complain about something that you don't understand why, or you're complaining about something you don't understand why, and they don't understand why, or that it just comes up as just kind of like something missing, or it can be like a hot affair, but it doesn't bloom into something closer emotionally, and so on and so forth. Um, but I also want you to know that Venus and the moon do not necessarily contradict each other, because there's this notion that desire and intimacy are like enemies, and like water and oil and different elements. And I'm not saying that they're I'm not saying that this is fundamentally wrong, but you do understand there are air signs, water signs, earth signs, and yeah, fire signs. And you could have like a moon that is of water element in Leo, that is a fire sign. So, you know, so that fire. And let's say you have a Venus in Sagittarius, okay, in your natal chart. In your natal chart. So that and they meet in a trine in your natal chart, still haven't reached a partner, you have a greater chance to attract into your life a person that you easily love and desire, that you easily feel like you're good friends, and they care for each other and love each other. Easily having this sensual nature in alignment with your emotional nature, because you bring that to the table. Then there is another one. If that is if you're just looking for one. Yes, some people are polyamorous, non-monogamous, and whatnot. Um, so so you can have like this both explain partially why there are times when it feels like you can't have it all, but it also kind of explains those cases where there are people who can have it all, and who naturally have it all together. And there are things to work with. Always, there are things to work with. Um, but then you also have to spend the time, and I think the best method would be meet your self-care needs, meet your Venusian needs with you. So you're already filling in your cup, and while it doesn't grant you anything, it does put you in touch with your emotional and sensual nature from a place that is fulfilling, not from a place of, oh, I realized what I desire, but I got a reject, or I realized how I like to be cared for, and only when so and so did not do that, then I realized that that's important to me. Because when we don't, and this is what astrology can do for you, because you can look at your chart and you can try and see, like, let's say have in, I don't know, Sag, then try to be, active in an athletic way. Try to see how do you feel when, like, you do learn about, religion or philosophy or whatnot, and like you'd have to see the house as well, and then, like, how do you feel? Do you get that safe feeling? Do you get come up that interrupts with the soul with that? Um, it's a way to get at your own core needs, desires, and meeting them in a beautiful experience, in a learning experience, in in an authentic and more autonomous experience that can later not grant you, but allow, at least allow a lot more authentic relationships. And it also allows you, when you learn, when you watch my series of Venus Wisdom on a Venus Day, and I address a lot of things that are so, when I think about Venus interacting with the outer planets, I had a video like that, I think about 2 months ago, uh, or a couple of months ago, where I addressed Venus interacting or hard aspecting or harmoniously aspecting outer planets. And this is a very important video because there I actually explain why do you experience those things that you experience. Let's say, the go-to is Venus Uranus. Everybody's going to have a Uranus opposition or Uranus transit where they feel like a Kundalini rise. It's the rise of the sexual energy. It's also the rise of the life energy. And so what seems like a hot affair um, can be simply a, a side effect of your having this enlightened state that you're required to have to liberate yourself from something that you've been up until now in voyage into the new. And it can be learning something new, it can be your vocation, it can be your vacation, it can be expressing this side of your personality, expressing this side of the sexuality, and whatnot, and that can express itself in an affair. Um, so learning about these things and learning astrology can help you also to open your mind and to get educated on the basis of something that um, oh, that has merit, and to take it not to a dogmatic place, but just like you go abroad and you see people and they have different, like, they eat different food, they experience relationships in a different way, they have different habits, they different holidays, they do labor differently, they do then learning about astrology, you learn about people who do relationships differently. And just knowing that and just encountering that through videos like this, rather than, through dating someone where you come with one expectation and they completely defy it, and you get like a reality shock, but maybe you already have intimacy together. You can get so hurt and so confused and so this, or hurt someone, confuse someone, um, just because nobody teaches you that relationships and investments in business, your values, um, are also a skill, or are also a type of a subject that you need to learn about. It's not usually, there is some sort of emotional intelligence courses in elementary schools across the globes, depending on the country. Yeah, that exists. People give you like sex education. So it's getting better for some countries, getting worse for some others. Um, but it's like nowhere in your formal education do you get uh, an actual addressing of relationships in your life. And by the time you do, it's already, well, those attachment patterns are the type you had when you got hurt, when you got traumatized. You can be, and while that's very, life changing information for many people, it already comes at the point where you're already having these patterns that you're not necessarily having to have. Um, so yeah, and that is not just true to your relationships with people, it's also true to your relationships with, expenditure, to your relationship with your values. For example, your values can sometimes be something that you're not so conscious or you take for granted. um, For example, let's say you grew up in a vegan family and you're vegan, which nowadays can actually be true to some of my viewers even. And then you run into people who are like raising cattle for food, and their value is to be self-sustainable, and that can be a reality shock to you because that's like something you hadn't considered, that people can have different values that can be contradicting and so on and so forth. Um, but that is something people do address, I think, in some formal education a lot. It is more the type of expenditures, or how you spend your money, or how do you uh, work in terms of trade, in terms of sales. If you haven't been working in sales or marketing, you're not going to know it. And even if you have, then a lot of it can be both done and taught manipulatively, while there is also merit to understanding that your client is not just their values, it's not just what they say they are, it's also how they feel about the purchase. And that feeling about the purchase is not something that you need to judge. If they need to feel important, they need to feel important. If what makes them feel special is applying to status, this is theirs, and like they won't be happy. You have to sell them the best product and they can buy the best product, and everything is going to be okay with your sale, and everything is going to be okay with your marketing, and you're going to tell them all the details, and you're not going to manipulate or lie to them in any way, form, or fashion. And they're going to call the customer service complaining furiously, something that like nobody even gets. Why? Because they didn't feel good about the purchase. They didn't feel you care for them, because you didn't apply to your psychological needs. To me, it took many years to learn that, to understand that. It's like I didn't understand why would I have to apply to that. Um, but when a person is buying something, it's not just their Venus and Mercury in action, it's also the moon in action. You can say, oh, but that's irrational, but that's this, but that's that. So we hold so many things, we spend money on so many things, therapy inclusive, um, only to address our, our safety needs, our moon needs, and very much relate to what we buy, what we value, what we spend money on. Also, the ruler of the second house, and also the moon. Also, the moon. Even if they don't make a connection. And this is big because you can expect people who don't have connection between Venus and their moon to kind of like buy what there and not really care about, needing to feel safe with the purchase. But no, they still need to satisfy their moon needs. It's still a relationship. Um, and then your objections can come from like an unforeseen place. And if you have a bit of knowledge about astrology, you're like, okay, that's probably the moon. That's probably like they're probably not feeling safe with me. They don't feel I care for them, and now I need to figure out what would make them feel that I care about them as a person, and not just to sell them the product. Because they need to feel that, and they need to see that, and they need to know that I'm applying to them. Um, so that there's the what makes them feel special. It's like that I see them as a person, and that can be the Venus. Like what if I have, like, I don't know, a shop of cars, and I try to sell a sports car to a person who's looking to have you know a safe family car, then I'm obviously I'm addressing the wrong Venus. But then if that person is not satisfied with that family car, then and all they told me about is how they want a safe car for them, for the family, and so on and so forth. And I would talk about them like, what was their best driving experience, and then they're gonna tell me, oh, we were with the family that there, we took, we had this show for the Lamborghini that let us ride, and I was driving like 40 400 miles an hour, and it was so exciting. I can remember this until today. And you're like, okay, you obviously are not going to be satisfied with this family car unless it has at least some features that can apply to that extreme experience. So you're obviously going to need a car that's both a family car, but it's kind of like a family car, sports car, and you like and something like that. If you don't do that, you're gonna end up with a very good deal. You could sell like I don't know how car. Or you could sell them like the Lightyear Zero that's coming up in $200,000, and you're like you close the deal because they're looking for something that is safe for the family, and you give them a solar car. It's like, oh, cool, self-sustainable, and they were looking for a hot sports car, but they didn't like it. They didn't say it because the moon is the moon and Venus is Venus. Um, but your job is to get those details and to get them. Tell me what was your best driving experience. That's going to tell you a lot about what kind of car this person desires or looking for, what needs do they need to meet. Then, oh, what kind of car, what do you need the car for? What do you need the car for? Well, the family, the this, the that, the that. So this is like a good business person. So what do you need the car for, and what are you looking for in a car? It's like what are you looking for in a partner? What was your best relationship experience you've ever had? You fantasize about a significant other. What question to ask both when you're in a dating situation and when you're in a sales situation, because that is going to that if you talk about what's the best experience you've ever had. An experience is something that always, like, the best experience will always be like something that might unite, or that has the best potential to unite our emotional needs and desires, and our sensual needs and desires, and our carnal needs and desires. That's Mars. If you hit, both Venus, Mars, Moon, poof. And if you got to hit, the Jupiter, or the person tells you something about the meaning of life in that experiment, come on. Then now you know more about them. So that was another Venus wisdom on a Venus day. And Venus is also aesthetic. So I'm thinking that's interesting because Venus is also how we look. And your Venus sign, for example, I have Venus in Taurus, so I appreciate comfort. And I know that in the evening, wake up because I can invest in my routine in the morning, and then in the evening, I just like if I can just like wash my face, brush my teeth, go pee, go sleep, and coolies, I'm safe. But if I had to do like removing them, I could invest in makeup and drawing this and that and so on, but I know that I have to clean my face later and remove all that up when I'm so tired. I know that I can't commit to that. Okay? And this is something where my Venus is looking for comfort. She values comfort. And so I rather invest in good food, in tending to my sensual needs, in being healthy, in workout that is healthy, than in makeup. Not because I don't appreciate beauty, not because I don't like makeup, but because I know it's not going to be healthy for my skin. Then I also appreciate health. Okay? My moon is in the fifth house, out of bounds, in Cancer, in conjunct Uranus. And so it doesn't aspect Venus. And so what brings these two together is like, well, isn't it about feeling beautiful or feeling comfortable in my skin? Isn't it about feeling naturally beautiful and letting the natural beauty? Isn't it about the type of person that I'd like to be around with the type of people who appreciate me and my beauty even when I'm not wearing makeup on. Isn't it about radical self acceptance? Uranus Moon, radical self acceptance is a form of self care. And that expresses it itself in my like makeup or the lack of my appearance. Okay? My way for tending to my appearance would more be like, washing my hair with apple cider vinegar diluted with water and all those natural things, or eating the right food, or make sure that I feel lovely, rather than getting that shape of contouring. And it's not that I don't know how to do it, I know how to do it, but my comfort, my value, Venus value. And also, I like to feel safe. So if I feel that I will do some practice that I will later not be able to remove, or that I will later hurt my health or the health of my skin, or be contaminated, then I won't do it. I won't take the chance because I know what it actually takes. So I can't have a Venus wisdom on a Venus day without talking a bit about Venus in Capricorn. This is not an extensive like Venus in Capricorn. It's like that's for another episode. But Venus in Capricorn is absolutely. I think I did a Venus in Capricorn when I think about it. Um, that's another like episode. So Venus in Capricorn is very practical, and the it's a Saturn ruled sign, so she wants something that will last on the long run. Now that depends on your um, house. For example, for me, Capricorn is the 11th house. It's also the things I put out there for the world to see. And for example, in this period, I will record a video that no matter what time you're watching this, it's still relevant to you. This is not a seasonal video. Okay, it's a video that talks about something that's very practical, that if you know this at any given time, it's something you can take something out of. And I do it naturally, just that's what I felt like talking about. And the moon is now in Virgo, which is my seventh house. So extra emphasis on relationship. Um, and that's one expression. But in your life, you will need to see the house. You will pay attention to relationships, to business, to expenditure in that house that time. That means that they're a lot more practical, and that's also why I was called in to talk about the moon, because when not finally aspected, is that it ignores sometimes it ignores emotional considerations. It goes practical. Practically, will this stand the test of time? But for something to stand the test of time, you actually need to address also emotionally. And look what I addressed. I addressed both the business side or marketing side or even sales side, where hey, you make a purchase, or somebody, or you sell somebody, you market somebody something. If you don't address their moon, if you don't address their emotional side, not just their sensual, not just the desires, not just their value, um, because Venus in Capricorn, she tends to be direct. But if you don't ask a question that digs a bit deeper, you're not gonna unveil that meets also the emotional needs and is necessary for something to stand the test of time. If your emotional needs are not met, you're not going to be your needs. Okay? And Capricorn, it could also be like your 10th house or your 6th house, or where your midheaven is. And in that case, that could play out as work, or the choosing of a profession for you, or the choosing of a job for you. And you might think, I want something that will last me for a long time. I want something that the market will always have desire for. You have to think about your moon, because if you don't think about your moon, you might end up with a disease. You might end up with depression, Saturn. You might end up with the sweet tooth, Venus Venus Saturn, or you might end up feeling like you can't get, even though everything seems to be okay. Okay, you're being treated, everything isn't, you're being treated right, and so on. Um, but you also need to satisfy psychological need there, an emotional need. You also need to um, about that place. And if your moon and Venus do not correlate, you might have an experience that, but you're depressed. And sometimes it is your job, and sometimes it isn't your job, and sometimes you can just address a certain emotional needs that you haven't been addressing in this place, and sometimes that's not the right choice. Sometimes you have to actually change what you choose to do. And we wouldn't normally think about Venus and the moon necessarily involved with career, but they also affect that. Um, so that is a practical Venus, and she needs to consider the moon. It looks at what is, it looks at matter, and it doesn't look at how you feel about the matter. It's important to be able to cut to the chase, and there are some matters where you're going to need to do that, okay? Especially if your emotional needs are being met. If you do feel, cared for and safe and so on. So Venus in Capricorn cuts to the chase. Like, yeah, I feel all that. I need to feel all that also with something that can sustain or can stand the test of time. Relationships, purchases, um, agreements, contracts, because Mercury is retrograde, need to stand the test of time. Those that don't might end. Saturn ending. Okay, they might end here. Uh, some relationships can begin for you, or you can have certain purchases will be beneficial for you on the long, and is where the moon applies to Venus, so you can, enjoy, apply, applies in the blue. So I think that's about it. Of course, I could go deeper on the moon and caregiving figures and your attachment things. I think the internet is full of knowledge, psychological knowledge about how our upbringing affects us and how our birth affects us. We are already aware of that, and how how does it shape our attachment thingy, like attachment style. And if you don't know that, Google that. That's definitely useful information. But I wanted to address just a particular part of your chart, and the wisdom that you can yield from paying attention to what aspect does Venus make or not make, and particularly with the moon, because it's always Venus Mars, and sometimes, for the ancients, even Venus Jupiter. But I don't see a lot of discussion about Venus Moon, and I think we do need to see more of that. So have a beautiful, beautiful day. And as you can see, I'm wearing a malachite here, which is also a Venus crystal green. And this is a moonstone. Moon. Okay, so I'm bringing these energies together, and I'm getting more insights. And that video came up. So I'll see you in my next video. I was Shirley with Spirit of Matter and Venus Wisdom on a Venus day. Let me know in the comments below, where is your moon sign? Where is your Venus sign? What aspects do they make in your natal chart? And if you could relate to one of these experiences, and you can also check all of my Venus Wisdom on a Venus day videos that can further add to the topics of relationships and the topics of sometimes business, and values, and what you invest in, what you're invested in spirit and in matter. So bye bye.